Hello and welcome back to the 500 workshop. Today we're inside because it's cold out and we're going to be looking at distributors. So I have 3 electronic ignition distributors on my cars. We're going to be looking at one of the original distributors with points. It's one of the ones that I took off my cars, but I have kept it just in case I ever needed it, but also it's going to allow me today to demonstrate how the distributor works in conjunction with the coils and spark plugs and engine, and how to service the distributor as well. So here we have a simple setup. We have our distributor, we have our coil, and we have our spark plugs with our high tension leads connecting them. So looking at the distributor, this end, which is the end that goes into the engine block, is driven and rotates off of the camshaft. So as the engine turns, the camshaft turns, and also the distributor turns. Now, if we take a look inside what's actually happening while the distributor turns, first of all, we'll take off our high tension leads. And these are new leads, so they're nice and stiff. And we take off our distributor cap. So I'll just show you a close-up of what that looks like, and we'll also give you a look inside the distributor cap as well. Now, on many engines this would be more than 3, because ours is only 2-cylinder. We've only got 3 points here. If it's a 4-cylinder car, you'd have 5 points. 6-cylinder would have 7, etc. But this has only got 3. So this is our rotor arm, and if we turn again the bottom of our distributor, you can see that rotor arm moving around, and you can see connection on the top of this rotor arm, which lines up with these points here. So every time we have a full rotation, it will hit the points within inside the distributor cap here and here once each, and that will fire each of the spark plugs. And we can take this off quite easily. It just pulls off, and then inside we can see our contacts here and our contact breaker. So now let's try and see if we can get this. As the engine turns, you can see that the inside here has a kind of a lobe which is not circular. It's again, if you got a 4-cylinder engine, this particular piece here will look slightly different, but it's kind of cammed, and as it rotates, it opens at the high point and closes the contacts. So as it goes around, they just open very slightly and close. So what is actually happening here when this breaks the contact? Now, to understand this, we need to look at our coil. Our coil has a primary winding and a core. And that primary winding is lots of kind of probably copper cable wrapped around in very tight kind of coil around the outside here. And when this breaks the contact, it basically disconnects the earth from this primary winding. So at the point where the contact is closed, there is a circuit here, and that electricity is flowing around the primary winding. As soon as that connection is broken with the distributor and the points, that electricity has to go somewhere, and it dumps all that electricity into the core. the core then takes that electricity down the high tension lead into the middle point here of our distributor cap. And then our rotator arm is spinning around with the engine cycle, and that electricity, as it gets dumped down that high tension lead, is passed through the rotator arm to one of these 2 points here. And this is happening at huge revolutions per minute. So the electricity is passed through the rotator arm to the contact point, to our high tension lead, and out to our spark plugs, which creates our spark. So it's a very kind of simple engineering but very clever piece of kit. So that's how a distributor works. We then often have to service them. They are a serviceable item, and they are really important to the running of the car. So they're normally the service pack that you get with these comes with new contact breaker points and a new condenser. So they're the things we're going to focus on. But there's also 2 or 3 other jobs that you just want to do to make sure that you keep the health of this running. Now, if you can see in here, this is not in the best condition ever, and actually the screw that holds the contact points in place is really not very healthy at all. So just we'll need to just be careful as we take these apart. First thing I'm going to do though is take off the condenser. It's a really easy job. You've got we've got 8mm socket here. So first thing we're going to do is we'll disconnect the coil cable, and then we'll disconnect the cable for the condenser. There we go, just comes off like that. There's a screw in the side here. And there we go, condenser is off. And obviously putting it back on is the reverse of that, which we'll show you in a minute. We then got our points. So points are held in with a screw. Let's see if we can get an angle on that. There we go. So we're just going to unscrew that. Now again, I said this screw is not in good condition, and that is definitely the case. Best to have a screwdriver that's magnetic as well, so you can get that screw out easily. And then fundamentally these points should just lift down. It's a bit difficult because there's quite a spring on this, and we can lift out that piece as well. So those 2 bits are out, and our distributor is ready for the new ones to be put in. So I haven't actually got new ones here, so I'm going to put the old ones back in. Again, I'm not using this in the car today. You'd normally do this with the distributor still on the car, to be honest with you, because when you're rotating, you have to rotate the engine in order to reset the point gap, which we'll do in a minute, but we'll do that by hand. So before I put these points back in, often halfway through the usage of these, I mean, you can replace them quite frequently if you want to, but often you need to clean up just with some light file or a small bit of sandpaper or something the points here. So on the inside here you've got the actual points themselves, which make the connection there. So they need cleaning up, but these are fairly new and not really got any debris, oil or gunk on them, and they're looking quite shiny. So we'll just put these back in as is. So first bit goes in. This is a little bit trickier. You have to thread the top of this on here first, push our spring in, and then we just should be able to ease it down. There we go, starting to go. Need to make sure you get the spring the right side of the connection here. This is the only real fiddly bit. Here we go, so got it in. We just need to get this connection, the spring back into the right place, right area. Now that should drop. No, not quite going. Spring's not quite where it needs to be. There we go. So that's now back where it needs to be. Just dropped the screw. So we'll just go back and get that. Right, so I have to put the screw back in. Easiest to pick it up again with a decent screwdriver. And we're just going to, first of all, just make sure we can get it in the right place, and then just screw that up. And we'll set the point gap in a moment. We'll just put the condenser on first. So we put a little washer on, then our condenser nut. I'll just hold that in place for a second whilst we do the screw up for the condenser, and so that's nicely held in place. R8 and just tighten this. There we go. And then we put our negative coil connection back on as well. So that's pretty simple so far. Right, so the next thing to do is that we want to set the gap between the points, when it's open, at the point when it's open, the gap there needs to be, and we're just going to refer to our manual at this point. So it says in the manual the gap needs to be between 0.0185 to 0.0209 inches. Now the way we can adjust this is by loosening our screw in there and moving at the point where we're fully open the gap until we're at the correct point. If I take my feeler gauge here, and here I've got 0.015 and a 0.004, which makes a 0.019, which is in between the two values we were given. We're actually exactly where we need to be, so we don't need to adjust that right now. But if we did, we would undo our points, and as you can see it's now closed even though it's at the top of the open thing. So and then we just move the plate at the bottom backwards and forwards until we get the gap that we are looking for. So let me just tighten this again. Just check with the feeler again, that's as open as it will go at the moment, and that is a very good fit with those feeler gauges. So we would leave it like that. It doesn't need any further adjustment, and as we can see, when it rotates it opens and closes with the gap that we're looking for. So the other jobs that is recommended to do is to put some very light grease. I've seen some people use like Vaseline or something, otherwise a multi-purpose grease, very thin amount onto the lobe, so as it rotates it's nicely lubricated. And then in the top here you should have a piece of felt, and normally it's disgusting, but I've just found myself some new felt and put it in here today. Threw the other one out because it was so awful. And you're advised to drop a couple of drops of oil down the top there. I'd just use regular kind of engine oil that you put in your Fiat engine. Just a couple of drops in there to keep it lubricated, and then the felt just stops that oil from kind of a centrifugal force and coming back out onto any of the components in the distributor. In terms of putting the rotor back on, rotor arm, it is keyed. So if you look inside there, this side has a little key in the bottom which aligns to this, can we see there, aligns to that kind of hole that side. So we'll align that and it should push on and it goes all the way down, which is nice, and that's done that first time. Then we get our distributor cap, and again this should only really go on one way. This cap has again a kind of key here, and there is a key on the side of the distributor here, so that should line up nicely. We swing our arms back over the top to Make sure everything is firmly tight, and then we're ready to put our high tension leads back on. It does matter which order they go in. Make sure you got the coil to the coil. You've got it does say on the top 1 and 2, so you know which spark plugs they should be going to. 1 should be the one at the front of the engine, 2 should be the one at the back, and they just go back on and should be ready to operate. Now, it's good advice generally, if you have serviced a distributor, just to redo the timing and check the timing hasn't changed. I'm not going to show you because I'm not at the car, and this distributor is not in position to show you how to do the timing. We'll look at that another day and on another episode. But fundamentally, that is the distributor. Really imaginative piece of engineering, and what I thought was very scary once upon a time. But once you understand exactly what's going on and how the inner workings are operating, it's actually very simple and very, very clever piece of kit. So that was our episode on our distributor. Hopefully it was useful seeing it out of the car. Normally, obviously, you'd work on it in the car, but it's useful to see how exactly it works, what it's doing, and how it interacts with the spark plugs and coil. So hopefully that was useful for some of you. We will look at the timing of the engine another time with the distributor. So we'll come back to that. But yeah, thanks for joining me today, and let's hope next time it's a bit warmer and we can get outside.